Last night, I was sprawled out watching reruns of that 70s show, my eyes heavy and my mind drifting in a haze. I was starting to doze off when a loud thump by the patio door jolted me awake. The chocolate chip cookie I'd been halfway through slipped from my hand, tumbling down my chest as the noise snapped me out of my drowsy stupor. Probably just an animal, I thought, or maybe the house settling. Eric Foreman's such a goofball. Donna's always way out of his league. Lucky for him, I like this show. I settled back, ready to drift off again, when another thump, this time from the ceiling, made me shriek. What the hell is that? I bolted upright, my posture stiff, like I was ready to catch every tiny detail my senses could pick up. Out of a vague sense of fear, I flipped on the kitchen light, not really expecting anything to be there. I checked the back deck for that earlier thump. Nothing. Super weird, I thought. Nothing else happened, so I started to relax. I wasn't too worried at that point, though I was still a bit on edge. I'm a college student, spending the summer at my parents' place while working downtown in D.C. They're at the beach, so I'm alone in this pretty big house. It was 10:30 p.m. when the door knocked. Seriously? I thought. Now, if I'd been on the set of a horror movie or watching something creepy, I'd have instantly linked the thumping to this late-night knock. But neither applied to me right then, so I didn't. Still, those thumps had left me a little anxious. When the knock came, though, my mind shifted away from the noise. It was probably nothing to stress over. Maybe a salesman or a mailman. I remembered a time a few years back when a UPS guy rang our bell around midnight to drop off a package. I was the only one awake, and it scared the crap out of me. Could be something like that. Or more likely, it was my buddy Frank. He mentioned maybe coming over, but said he was too tired. He's a bit spacey sometimes, though, so he might have changed his mind without telling me. Guess I'll head over there and tell whoever it is I'd like some privacy. Unless it's Frank, of course, then I'll just tease him about how spacey he is. Still, the situation felt off, so I grabbed the first thing that could pass as a weapon, an old lacrosse stick. I held it by the head, the shaft pointing out like a lightsaber, as I rounded the corner to the foyer. Through the door, I spotted a pair of skinny legs and odd worn-out slippers. All right, this is a little weird, I thought. Definitely a skinny girl. Maybe she's confused, trying to visit a friend and knocked on the wrong house. The place next door is about the same size, though it doesn't look much like ours. I couldn't think of what else it could be. All these thoughts raced through my head in the seconds it took to walk from the kitchen to the doormat by the front door. Standing there between the big modern door and whoever the hell was outside, I propped the lacrosse stick against the wall behind me so the stranger wouldn't see it. My hand hovered hesitantly toward the doorknob when I heard a voice from the other side. Soft whispers, no clear words. I figured someone must be with the slipper girl since I hadn't even opened the door yet. And as far as I could tell, they hadn't seen anyone was home. Unless she's talking to herself, which didn't exactly ease my mind. My hand froze midair, halfway between my body and the door, like I was about to bust out some awkward robot dance move. I waited a few seconds, unnerved by how the whispers seemed to sync with my movement toward the knob. I waited longer, no more voices. I took a deep breath, in through my nose, out through my mouth. Knock knock. I flung the door open 3/4 of the way, fast, like a toddler too curious and anxious to peek at the monster in their closet. I stuck the right half of my body out, facing two dark, feminine figures on my porch. First thing I noticed, those beat-up slippers. I looked up from there, tilting my head and neck to take her in. Straight black hair, uncombed, matted in all directions. She looked sickly, shivering in the cold, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and tiny khaki shorts. She was about 5'3", maybe 13 years old, staring straight ahead, which, for me at 5'9" on the raised step above my lowered porch, meant she was looking somewhere around my pelvis. It was dark, so I couldn't make out her face, but something about her felt off. The way she stood, off balance, her neck tilted to the left like some chewed-up, overused doll. Before I could react, I noticed her companion, half a foot behind her, and to the left, a younger girl, maybe 9, though she had an inch on her sister. She wore a ragged dark blue shirt, black pants, and rain boots. Same black hair, but she didn't carry that same bizarre vibe as the older one. I stared down at these two girls, no clue how long I'd been standing there since opening the door. Had they said anything? What do I say? This is too damn weird. Can I help you? I managed, using the tone I'd normally use with kids, though it had a chilly edge. I stammer a bit when I'm nervous or excited, and here I could barely get the words out. "Hello, sir, please, we are cold and would like to use the phone," the younger one said, her head fixed straight ahead. Her voice, it was like nothing I'd ever heard. Feminine, sure, but each word came out detached, like they were spat from a machine and strung together by someone else. Almost robotic, yet she was clearly human, a young girl talking to me, but so off. She didn't sound her age, more like 14 or 15, though she looked no older than 10. Why was she speaking and not the older sister? What's going on? Is the older one shy? Mentally off? Am I dreaming? And what's this about using my phone? It felt like she was reading from a script and flubbed her line. Did she mean to ask something else? Unsure how to handle her random question, I fumbled. "Well, I'm not sure what you're asking." "Are you too lost?" Nothing at first, just blank stares straight ahead, like they couldn't even see me. Then the younger one said, "Please, sir, we are alone. I need to call home. Let us in." Same monotone voice. No real answer to my question, like she was just waiting for her next cue. That "let us in" at the end hit like a command, totally separate from her earlier polite tone. Trembling, fear mixing with a gut feeling that something was seriously wrong, I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I can't let you in my house. You'll have to stay out there while I grab a phone and call for you." I couldn't just leave these kids stranded, but something deep in my stomach screamed I couldn't let them inside. I was scared out of my mind. They just kept staring forward, silent. Then, out of nowhere, the older one, who hadn't moved or spoken, changed completely. Her fists clenched, shaking at her sides like she was in agony, and without moving her pale face or neck, she grinned, flashing all her teeth at once. They were sharp and human, like an animal's. I let out a loud, obvious scream of terror. The younger one noticed my fear, looked up at me, and on her pale face, her eyes. Pure black, no iris, no retina, like two black marbles. Then I saw the older sister's black eyes too, still smiling silently. Their grotesque presence hit me like a wave, nausea choking me. I froze, couldn't even scream again, lost in fear as my body buzzed, tingling numb. After what felt like minutes, I finally let out a horrified noise I'd never made before, slamming the door and retreating into the safety of my house. My body wouldn't stop shaking. I stood there, crying, trembling by the door. I needed my cell phone. It was in the family room. I could still hear that 70s show playing in the background, a small comfort, but it sounded wrong now, foreign, almost like another language in my panic state. I had to call the cops. I couldn't let them in. "Get out of here," I yelled, banging on the door to scare them off. Muffled sounds came from the other side, animal cries or barks. It wasn't the younger girl, I knew that. It was the older one, the silent off one, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. I had to get my phone, but I couldn't move. I couldn't lose track of them. I could still see those slippers through the side window. She was still there. More animal noises from outside. I screamed, yelled, smashed my lacrosse stick against the door. Anything my exhausted lungs and muscles could manage. It felt like a grizzly bear was attacking me. I was in full survival mode, doing everything to drive them away. But every sound I made, the older girl matched with disturbing barks and screeches that still haunt my dreams. Then through the door, I heard a muffled, "We just want to call our mother," from the younger one. "Please, we are scared and alone. Let us in." That "let us in" came in the same flat tone, repeated like a recording. "Please let us in," like a chant. "Let us in, let us in, let us in." She kept going, each one louder, more forceful, while the older girl's noises synced with her demands. I kept screaming at them, waiting for any sign this nightmare would end, until finally it stopped. The noises, the chanting gone. The slippers gone. I looked out the window, sprinting legs. The older girl ran, fast as a track star, but her legs twisted over each other like some circus freak. This is so screwed up. I watched her catch up to the younger sister, who must have signaled to leave. She stood there a minute or two, barking, screeching, yelping like a Neanderthal, as I watched the older sister find her younger sister waiting on the other side of the road. They stood there, not glancing back at my house, just staring straight ahead the other way, like they were waiting for something or someone. Suddenly, a large, wiry figure approached them. Long legs and arms, lanky, with inhuman features. It had the shape of a woman but was far too tall, its form awkward and uneven, like one of those scarecrow-like animations from a Tim Burton film. This creature, this monster, led them away into the night. They hadn't left my front door the entire night. I didn't sleep. I've barely spoken since to my close family, my girlfriend, my friends. They want to believe me. They say they don't think I'm crazy, but I can tell they don't really buy it. This is so damn screwed up. Whatever it was, whoever they were, it's real. They're like these subhuman things trying to take us to make us join them. I don't know what they are. They radiate this energy of fear and terror like nothing I've ever felt before. I lie awake at night, terrified that when I open my eyes, that older sister will be outside my window, hanging from a tree, smiling at me, barking, waiting for me to step outside. I haven't left the house since. It's been a few days now, and I've managed to leave the house at the urging of my loved ones. With each passing hour, I do feel a little safer. I know this sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, but it's so messed up and the realest thing I've ever been through. 6 years ago, I nearly lost my life at the hands of a friend, an experience that sometimes veers into the paranormal. It took me years to even talk about it, and I'm still wrestling with the PTSD it left behind. Back then, my buddy James and I, someone I'd known for ages and considered one of my closest friends, decided to go camping. I wasn't fazed about heading out alone with him since we'd been tight for so long, but I figured it'd be fun to bring along a girlfriend of mine, Lisa, to round out the group. We settled on a campsite I hadn't visited in a couple of years, though I still vaguely remembered how to get there. On the way, we stopped at a gas station just outside the last little town before the wilderness. We double-checked our directions with the attendant, who pointed toward the horizon and said, "Follow the storm." Sure enough, massive black clouds were piling up in the exact direction of our destination. It was hands down the most terrifying storm I'd ever seen, perfect for a wild story, right? We sat in the car, debating whether to turn back, but being the stubborn thrill-seekers we were, we decided to tough it out. We all loved camping in the rain, storms and all. So we started down this dirt road in the middle of nowhere. The closer we got to the campsite, the worse this gut-wrenching feeling hit me, pure dread, like I knew something awful was coming. There's no other way to describe it. The storm got so bad, lightning striking right next to the car, that we finally agreed it was too dangerous to keep going. We turned around, heading back toward town, and the second we left the forest, bam, the storm just stopped. Okay, weird. If it was that localized, we figured we'd camp somewhere else instead. About 20 minutes from town, there's a reservoir with a man-made lake and a few scattered camping spots. We parked there, grabbed our gear, and started down the trail that loops around the lake, looking for a more secluded spot. The parking area had a couple of cars already, with some folks camped right at the trailhead. They seemed friendly enough when we chatted with them, so we invited them to swing by our spot in about an hour after we'd set up. We'd play some games, have a few drinks, make a night of it. We found our spot, pitched camp, and out of nowhere, I got a text from another friend, Mia, an artist whose career has taken off big time in recent years. Cell service out there is usually crap, so it was odd she got through. I told her where we were, and she replied, "Great, I've been looking for a really big fire lately. I'm on my way." Weird thing to say, but Mia's an eccentric type, smokes a ton of weed, says stuff I don't always get, so I brushed it off. Let's skip ahead a bit for the sake of the story. The other couple joined us, and we were having a blast, drinking, laughing, the works. Then Mia showed up with this massive, creepy statue she'd made back in her freshman year of college. She said it had brought her nothing but bad luck for 4 years, and she wanted to burn it. I wish to hell I'd had some kind of bad vibe about it, but I've never been big on supernatural stuff, so we all just laughed and tossed it into the fire. A couple of hours later, Mia broke out her weed and smoked with James for a while. He was mixing it with liquor, getting pretty messed up. I don't smoke, so I stayed sober. The new couple headed back to their camp as it got dark, and Mia decided to bounce too. She hadn't planned to stay the night. That left just me, James, and Lisa. Around then, James started acting strange. We chalked it up to him being crossfade, which damn near cost me my life. It started with his voice. It went from normal to this low, gravelly tone, like he was someone else entirely. We still thought he was just wasted. Then it got worse. He started muttering nonsense, quiet at first, but it got clearer. He pulled Lisa aside and told her he worked for the CIA, had millions stashed in offshore accounts, and could make any of us vanish without a trace. This was my best friend, someone I'd never once felt uneasy around, so we just laughed off his creepy threats. Okay, drunk ass, we said. Then Lisa noticed the hatchet we'd been using for firewood was gone. We looked everywhere, but it was too dark to find it. We gave up, figuring it was lost, until things took a turn. James was still mumbling dark gibberish to himself, sitting alone on the far side of the fire pit. Eventually, he passed out. Lisa and I stayed up, giggling about how bizarre he'd been, patting ourselves on the back for a fun night. About an hour later, raindrops started falling. The damn storm we'd driven to avoid was about to hit us. Oh well, it was late. We dragged James into the tent and crashed. Here's where it gets real. We shook him gently until he groaned, told him it was raining and time for bed. He stumbled up, and Lisa and I each took a side to help him to the tent. We stopped to unzip it, and that's when he lost it, completely unhinged, like he was possessed by the devil himself. I'm not exaggerating. He let out this blood-curdling, high-pitched scream that still haunts my nightmares. I was bent over, so I missed the swing that sent Lisa flying across the camp. He turned smoothly despite being trashed and kicked out the last embers of the fire. This all happened in seconds, but it felt like slow motion. I remember every detail. The fire was out, the campsite pitch black. No moon, just storm clouds. Next thing I knew, James was right beside me, so close I could feel his breath. Then I was on the ground, the wind knocked out of me from the fall. I couldn't breathe anyway. He was sitting on my stomach, hands clamped tight around my throat, strangling me with all his strength. James is a big guy, tall, muscular, with these long arms. I clawed at him, bucking under his weight, but I couldn't reach his chest to push him off. Lisa was screaming my name, trying to find me in the dark, but I was fading fast. It felt like forever, though it was probably just minutes. Through my blurry vision, I saw Lisa fighting him, punching with everything she had. She's a rugby player, tough as nails. I blacked out. From here, I only have Lisa's account. When I went limp, she thought I was dead and lost it. She went full force, kneeing him in the face over and over until he was dazed enough to let go. She shoved him off and dragged me up, still out cold, dead weight. I came to a few minutes later as she was hauling me down the path, sobbing quietly. I snapped awake in full panic mode, screaming, crying, shaking uncontrollably. Lisa hushed me, saying James hadn't followed, but we didn't want him to start. I pulled myself together enough to walk, though my flip-flops were gone from the struggle and the rocky path cut to my bare feet. Lisa, being the badass she is, took off her sandals and put them on me. Seriously, that girl's a saint. It was about 15 minutes from our campsite to the parking lot, longer with my fresh trauma, but there was no sound behind us. James was still back there, it seemed. As we neared the other couple's camp by the parking lot, we started yelling for help. The girls stayed in their tents, spooked, but the guy came out to see what was wrong. We explained the attack, how it almost died. He grabbed a gun, ready to march back to our site, but his girlfriend came out and talked him down, saying it was smarter to get us to cell service for 911 than risk a murder charge. Then we realized there was a camp manager's place a couple hundred yards away. Perfect. We stumbled over, banged on the door, bawling as we spilled the story. The woman there was so kind, gave us water while her husband called the cops. They sat us on their couch to wait. I still remember noticing 5 deadbolts on their door. He wasn't getting in. Half an hour later, a dozen cops and an ambulance rolled up. They took our statements and headed to find James, asking if he was armed. We didn't know, mentioned the missing hatchet and my knife in my purse. They went in loaded for bear. Lisa and I got loaded into the ambulance, and right before the doors shut, an officer came over. They'd found James at the campsite, naked, bleeding from the scratches Lisa gave him, holding the hatchet and laughing. He was mumbling about being possessed by the devil, spouting nonsense. The officer asked if he'd taken drugs. We said he'd smoked weed and drank. Could it have been laced? Doubtful. Mia didn't turn into Satan that night. The rest is pretty standard. My first ambulance ride, an expensive ER visit, a ton of meds, CT scans for neck swelling. They wanted me to stay overnight, but no way was I leaving my cat, my therapy animal, alone at home. I went back. To top it all off, I locked my bedroom door because of roommate issues, and my keys were still at the campsite. I could hear my cat meowing inside while I sobbed outside, too drugged up to do anything. Lisa, in one last act of heroism, went with her mom, who works with abused women, and helped me through tons of panic attacks after to get my stuff. We were all running on 24 hours of no sleep. That's the story. The rest is predictable. Charges, prosecution, court, and a lot of physical and emotional pain. He pleaded guilty. The judge asked if he wanted to say anything. He didn't. I never got an apology for him nearly killing me. Sometimes there's no clean closure. I never bought into bad luck, superstition, or possession, but I'm damn sure burning that statue flipped a switch in him that night. He wasn't a violent guy, never had been. That statue did something. It cursed Mia with bad luck and obviously unleashed some evil spirit when we set it ablaze. This is the most detailed I've ever gotten about it. I used to do a lot of camping and hunting with my dad growing up in Michigan. Heading up north was a regular thing for us. What set us apart from most folks who did the same was how far off the grid my dad liked to go. Deep into the woods, way beyond where most people ventured. He'd drive his truck as far as it could go, park it when the terrain got too rough, and then we'd hike for miles, lugging all our gear. The last time we went camping together was by far the strangest trip we ever had. My dad was pumped because he'd just gotten a brand new 4-wheel drive truck, and he couldn't wait to test its limits. After a long drive, some of it so hairy I thought we might not make it, we ended up in a small clearing. It was almost dark by the time we got there, so we hurried to set up the tent, ate some food, and crashed for the night. When we woke up the next morning, we got a better look at the place. It seemed like it had been a campsite before. There was a spot where someone had built a fire, a pile of firewood, and patches of flattened grass where people must have walked or set up camp over time. I think I even spotted some old trash scattered around. We poked around a bit more and came across what I called a swamp, a shallow pool of water with fallen trees and branches sticking out of it, or maybe growing right through it. It had this eerie vibe, though I was more worried about snakes than anything spooky. After checking that out with my dad, we decided to push deeper into the forest, where the trees got so thick no truck could have made it through. We'd been walking for about an hour when we stumbled into another clearing. Even before we got there, we could hear something up ahead. As we stepped out of the dense woods into this open space with short grass, we found the source of the noise. Right in front of us was a wooden cabin. Parked out front were a couple of rusted-out cars that looked like they'd been there forever. Impossible to explain, given how tight the trees were all around. To our left, there was a cliff that dropped straight down, sharp as anything. And coming from the cabin was a racket, loud enough that as we got closer, we could tell it was a woman screaming. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but she sounded furious, like she was tearing into someone or something. I remember wanting to check out the cliff, curiosity, I guess, but my dad grabbed me, froze for a second, and stared off like he was piecing something together. Then he told me to turn back, right then and there. We didn't walk, we practically ran back to our campsite. When we got there, he didn't waste a second. He had us pack up everything and pile into the truck to get the hell out. I don't know what he saw or heard that spooked him so bad, but it was enough to rattle him, and I'd never seen him scared before. That's what freaked me out the most. We were both armed. My dad was a crack shot too. He'd earned medals in the army for his rifle skills, sharpshooting, and all that. When he had his hunting rifle in hand, he was fearless, like nothing could touch him. But whatever was back there, he knew it was something he couldn't handle. Not with a gun, not with all his bravery. It wasn't just that he couldn't protect himself, he couldn't protect me either. That's what stuck with me, the idea that we'd run into something out there he couldn't face down, no matter how tough he was. Every year, I go bow hunting with a group of friends in southern Ohio. It's a tradition we've kept up, camping on a high bluff overlooking the Ohio River. On those crisp fall nights, we're surrounded by a sea of stars, a fire sending smoke curling into the sky. Down below, we can see the lights of barges drifting slowly along the river. For 4 days, we are in a different world, far from the busy cities we call home, hundreds of miles away. These thousands of acres of woods are starting to feel familiar after years of coming back, but it's the unknown that keeps pulling us here. On this trip, I set out alone one cool, dark, moonless morning in November. After a quick breakfast with the crew, I hopped in my car and drove to my hunting spot. I left camp, heading down a paved road for a few miles, then turned north, away from the river, onto a winding dirt road that snaked through one of the countless hollows in this rugged landscape. I was losing cell service, rolling along a gravel path that followed a creek bed, a deep valley with steep hills rising on both sides. All I could see was the gray glow of the road and the shifting shadows of trees in my headlights. I pulled off as far as I dared and parked, unloading my gear in the stillness. Everything was dead quiet. From there, I moved by the faint light of my headlamp, set to its dimmest glow. I nudged the car door shut gently, avoiding any loud noise that might echo too far into the woods. Before starting the hike, I paused, took a deep breath of the chilly air, and scanned my surroundings. It was pitch black, barely a breeze, just pure, heavy silence. I'd have to be extra quiet to avoid spooking anything. I crept down a hill and crossed the shallow creek, each step slow and careful, feeling for twigs that might snap underfoot. I followed a narrow trail I'd partially cleared through the thick tangle of briars and brush along the creek. At the base of a tree, I set up my climbing stand, inching my way up to about 20 feet. All I could see was the rough bark sliding past my face in the dark. Once I was settled, I stopped moving and melted back into the silence of the forest. Every few minutes, I sipped my coffee. As the sky started to lighten, just enough to make out my surroundings, what hunters call shooting light, well before sunrise, I heard something. A crackling, rustling sound came from down the hill, maybe 150 yards away. Was it a deer? It sounded like something running, but why? During the November rut, whitetail bucks will chase us through the woods for miles, desperate to mate. I've seen it plenty of times. But this felt off different somehow. The closer it got, the less it made sense. In just a few seconds, it was near enough that I could pinpoint the sound, but I couldn't tell what I was looking at, or if I was seeing anything at all. I can go weeks without a deer crossing my stand, but this thing, whatever it was barreling straight toward me, fast enough to make my stomach twist. The creek bottom rose sharply into a steep, almost vertical wall of rocks with hardly any vegetation, just a few leaves caught in the cracks. I finally caught sight of it cresting that drop-off, right at my eye level, 20 feet up in the tree. But before I could process it, it was already down the other side, charging at me full speed. By now, there was just enough light to pick out every leaf on the forest floor, but all I could make of this thing was a blurry, translucent swirl of brown, gray, and black, like I could see right through it. It moved in a dead straight line across the ground, too straight, at a speed that didn't seem natural. The coffee and the hike had me sharp, and the thought hit me hard. If this thing could cut through the woods like that, ignoring trees, rocks, everything, could climb this tree, hell, maybe it could leap the whole 20 feet. My chest tightened, adrenaline slamming through me as I watched it close the distance in a split second. My pulse pounded in my ears. The terror peaked as it reached me. I wasn't ready, had no time to react. They say a mountain lion can stalk you without you ever knowing, and if it wants you dead, it's over in an instant. We fool ourselves into thinking we can handle the unexpected, that we've got some control. Most of the time, that's a lie. There are things out there, forces so overwhelming, so unpredictable, they hit you before you can blink. I stared helpless as this thing tore past, almost brushing the tree. Thank God for that tree. It never slowed, never showed itself clearly. Just a violent blur, a storm of leaves, a ghost, not an animal, just a presence. It blasted through the thickest brush imaginable, down to the creek, ignoring the 7-inch bank, never veering off course. It moved with that same supernatural speed it came with, only now in the opposite direction. I tracked its path by the snapping sticks and rustling plants until the sound faded into the distance and was gone. Terrain that'd take a person 15 minutes to cross, if they could even manage it, this thing covered in seconds. A shiver ran through me, heavy and cold. The dread eased a bit, but I was left with this sinking feeling, like I'd brushed up against something I couldn't explain. Supernatural? No, of course not. It was probably a coyote, bobcat, a fox. Yeah, that's it. My brain scrambled for an answer, anything to make sense of it. I glanced at the rock wall along the hill. Could an animal, I know, climb something like that? Maybe. But would it? And if it did, wouldn't I have seen it clearly? Shouldn't it have been slower? This wasn't normal. I sat there, frozen in the tree, numb and tingling, trying to wrap my head around it. I looked up the creek toward a brushy meadow in the shaded bottoms to the north. Fog hung over everything, quiet and still. The woods were beautiful in a haunting way, hypnotic, isolated. I stared for a while as the sun crested the eastern hill, sending a few golden beams through the fog and the last clinging leaves. Shadows pulled back, daylight spilling into the forest. I didn't see another living thing that day. A few years back, I was working as a broadcast engineer when I got a call around 9:30 or 10 p.m. from the on-duty engineer, Tom. Our over-the-air signal had crapped out, and we were completely off the air. After some troubleshooting, we figured the issue was at our transmitter site and needed a hands-on fix. My boss, Mark, asked if anyone wanted to ride along with him to sort it out. After a few seconds of awkward silence, I volunteered. The RF transmitter site sat atop Beacon Mountain in Beacon, New York, about an hour-plus drive from the station. I'd never been up there before, so heading out in the middle of the night felt a little eerie. I met up with Mark, and we drove together, arriving at the base of the mountain just before midnight. The road up to the site was a narrow, winding, steep dirt track littered with big loose rocks, sketchy enough to make the climb nerve-wracking, even in daylight. I can't stress how dark it was out there. Pitch black, like the world just swallowed up the light. As we made our way up, we spotted headlights coming toward us a couple of times. Off-road jeeps, probably locals messing around. It wouldn't have been that weird, except it was the dead of night. We also passed two separate campfires flickering in the woods off the road. I figured they were just groups of people hanging out, maybe drinking, nothing too odd. Mark mentioned that locals sometimes lingered near the transmitter site and warned me to steer clear of them. He said they could be a rough bunch, not that they seemed all that sketchy to me, but it was my first time there, so what did I know? Then he added something that stuck with me, He never went up that mountain without a gun. It's not just the locals, he said. I've seen things out there I can't really explain. We got to the top, did our work on the transmitter, locked everything up, and started the descent. We were on a particularly steep stretch of the road, one where you have to ride the brakes hard because the car won't stop until the slope levels out, when 3 deer bolted across right in front of us. They didn't even glance at the car, just sprinted like something was after them. Since we were already braking, Mark swerved, and the front of the car clipped a rock, jolting us to a stop. He killed the engine quick, and as soon as the hum died, we heard it. Something big crashing through the woods, running in the opposite direction, away from the road and up the natural slope of the hill. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it that way, but whatever it was had already vanished. We could still see branches swaying and leaves settling where it had torn through. I asked Mark if he thought it was another deer, maybe a bear. He shook his head. Bears run on all fours. Whatever that was, it was on 2 legs. And bears don't hunt deer. Something was chasing them. When we first heard the footsteps, I guess it was maybe 10 or 15 feet from the car. Close enough that it must have been right above us on the incline before it took off. By the time I got the light on it, it was gone in 3 or 4 seconds, sprinting uphill fast. There are plenty of rational explanations, sure. Maybe Mark was just trying to mess with me, or it was some local wandering the woods. But here's the thing. If it was a person, why chase deer? And why bolt from the car like that? Plus, to disappear that quick, running uphill through thick brush, they'd have to be in Olympic-level shape. And the sound, it was too heavy, too big to be a bobcat, mountain lion, or coyote. Mark wasn't the type to prank people either. He's a stern, no-nonsense, old-school business guy. But he was rattled, visibly shaken, and just wanted off that damn mountain as fast as possible. I ended up going back to Beacon Mountain plenty of times after that before I switched jobs, but I never saw or heard anything like it again. One thing's for sure, though, I never went up there after sunset again. I don't work for that company anymore, and they don't even own the transmitter site now, so I doubt I'll ever have a reason to go back. I don't know of any reported sightings or weird stories from that area, but I do know there have been a bunch of car accidents on that road over the years. I always assumed it was just the lousy conditions, steep, rocky, unpaved, but after that night, who knows? Maybe there's more to it. From 2012 to 2013, I spent a lot of time hiking in and around the coastal range in Oregon. I'd often head out solo for days at a time, swinging into town only when I needed to restock on food. It was routine for me. After a day in town, I'd hike the 4 hours back to my campsite, usually getting there around dusk. The trail I used wasn't well traveled. It looked more like a deer path than anything official. I picked my spot for its quiet and isolation, steering clear of the usual camping areas. All I carried was a cell phone, no bright clothing, no GPS, no emergency beacon. Looking back, that probably wasn't the brightest idea. There were times out there when I'd hear or see things in the forest I couldn't quite place, strange sounds or shapes, but nothing came close to what happened in May of 2013. I'd done my usual restock run in a small town about 6 miles from my camp. I spent the day there like always and started the trek back as dusk settled in. For the first half, I stuck to dirt roads before cutting off onto the deer trail I'd taken earlier. By then, it was fully dark, but the sky was clear and the moonlight was enough to see the path. I don't wear headphones when I hike. I've always thought it's smarter to keep your ears open for whatever's surround, whether it's a predator, a person, or something else. I was in my head, mentally mapping out the next day's hike, when my thoughts just stopped cold. I hadn't heard a thing. No rustle, no snap, but out of nowhere, I was hit with this sharp, unshakable feeling that I wasn't alone on that trail. It's hard to explain. It was like some sixth sense or survival instinct kicked in. I knew without a doubt that something was behind me, about 30 yards down the path. To this day, I've got so many questions about how I knew. Standing dead still, I turned and looked back. Nothing. The trail was empty as far as I could see, but I felt it. I never felt anything like it before or since. Raw primal fight or flight surge. My rational mind was telling me everything was fine, but every other part of me was screaming to get the hell out of there. It's tough to put into words because it was so bizarre. Like I was being taunted, toyed with. Whatever was back there, I swear it knew I'd sensed it, even though I couldn't see a damn thing. That's what still gets me. It knew I knew, and it didn't care. The moonlight was bright enough to light up the trail 30 yards back, no problem, but there was nothing there. I'll swear to that. It was like something was daring me to come closer. This went on for maybe 30 seconds, if that. My heart was racing, but I still wasn't sure what to think since I hadn't seen anything solid to panic over. So I turned around and started walking, fast, but not running. What else could I do? If it was some guy out to get me, running wouldn't change much. He'd either catch me on the trail or follow me back to my tent. I'd been walking for maybe a minute when I heard it, a sound like rushing or swooping air, followed by something scraping across the dirt trail, like a rake dragging over the ground. The two noises came together half a second apart for times in a row, and they were close, maybe 20 yards back. Looking back now, I don't know how I didn't lose it right there, but somehow I kept my head and just focused on moving. I didn't look back, just kept up my quick pace, ignoring the panic clawing at me. Whatever it was stayed with me for most of the next hour as I headed toward camp. I could feel it there, trailing me, but I didn't dare turn around. A few minutes from my campsite, that fight-or-flight grip finally started to loosen, slowly but noticeably. I made it to my tent, crawled inside, and didn't sleep a wink all night. When morning came, I packed up my stuff and got out of there. It was the summer of 1986, and I just graduated from high school. I was living in Vancouver, British Columbia, and that afternoon, my girlfriend and I had been soaking up the sun at Kitsilano Beach. She had to leave early for work, so I stayed behind on my own. It was around 4 p.m., and my stomach was growling. I made my way up from the beach to an area called Spanish Banks, where there was a concession stand. The line was long. Expo 86 was in full swing that summer, so the beach was swarming with tourists. I placed my order, but they told me it'd be a 15 to 20 minute wait for my food. I settled onto a bench nearby and waited. For some reason, I glanced across the street. The concession stand sits right next to a narrow two-lane road, not ideal for beach traffic, and on the other side, there's a forest called the UBC Endowment Lands, tied to the university. It's a steep hill, thick with bushes and trees, dropping straight down to a curb and the busy street. That's when I saw him, a guy walking down through the forest. There's no sidewalk down there, and it's a damn dangerous spot to try crossing the road. Plus, it was a weird place to come out of, like he'd just emerged from the wild. I was pretty far from him, still near the concession stand, but the second I laid eyes on him, I got that gut-wrenching fear people talk about. Even from a distance, I could tell he was grinning, maliciously, his gaze locked on me. He crossed the street, still grinning. Lucky for him, there were no cars at that moment, so he made it over easily. Then he headed straight for me, beeline, and sat down on a bench across from mine. I'm not great with distances, but I guess it was about 10 to 15 feet away. He was First Nations, a bit older than me, maybe 19 or 20, with medium-length hair. He had on a white t-shirt with an unbuttoned red flannel shirt over it, paired with jeans. I can't recall his shoes, probably some kind of runners. He was decent looking, but there was something utterly evil about him. Malicious was the word that kept running through my head. And his eyes, they were black, no whites visible at all. But unlike other stories I've heard, they weren't shiny. I told my boyfriend later they looked like scratched black plastic. They also reminded me of peering into a microscope through one lens, seeing your own eyelashes pressed against it, almost spider-like. His eyes, his whole presence, scared me like nothing ever had. He just sat there, grinning at me. He knew I was terrified, and I could tell he was feeding off it. I knew I had to act like I wasn't fazed. Even though there were tons of people around, I felt completely alone. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. It was like knowing this guy existed made me hate being alive. The world would never feel safe with something like him in it. I sat there, pretending everything was normal, trying to hold it together on the outside because it felt like my survival depended on it. I had no clue what this thing might do, but I was sure my life was on the line. When my food was finally ready, I grabbed it and headed straight to the payphone. I kept my back to him as I dialed my boyfriend, telling him to get to Spanish banks fast because there was this creepy guy, and I didn't know how to get out of there. After he hung up, I stayed in the phone booth faking conversation. Maybe someone needed the phone, I don't know. Eventually, I had to step out. I sat back on the bench, and he was still there, grinning. A minute or two before my boyfriend showed up, the guy stood and sauntered off down the beach. When my boyfriend got there, he wanted to go after him, but I grabbed his arm and said we had to leave now. I couldn't fully explain how terrifying it was, and I still can't. It wasn't just scary like facing a murderer. It felt like if this thing got to you, it wouldn't just kill you. It'd do something worse, something that'd destroy or torment your soul forever.